Gabe, what's going on, my man?
What's up, man? I love the ingenuity and getting up and running, and really appreciate your support and the chatting along the way for the last 9 weeks.
This interview could be 15 minutes. This interview could be 12 seconds. I have no idea. So we're just going to try to jump right into the meat and potatoes of this as soon as possible. I thought, it's hard to say, you didn't have enough time because you had 9 parts, 9 hours. Who gets that much bandwidth? But I'm telling you, I feel like you guys had to chop off good stuff because as good as an in-depth as it was, I felt like there was a few moments where it jumped from chapter to chapter within one of the episodes. And I said, I bet you they have more there. So because of the history, because of the championships, because of the sagas and storylines, were there good stories, sound bites, etc., that you even had to chop out of 9 hours?
Of course. I mean, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we just got the bare minimum of 9 hours. So, yeah, there was always a story here, a story there. Some episodes were easier to get down to an hour. Some were harder. But yeah, I mean, and then also we just made creative choices of just like we have to streamline the story. But yeah, of course, there's always something left, which I'm sure you're going to ask me a follow-up question on that.
Okay, so I thought it was, and I talked about this on my Sirius XM radio show, I thought it was a beautifully made documentary. I think it paced really well. I thought that just like graphically, you guys didn't get in the way of the shots. You stayed out of it. I thought the music was poignant, but also it moved things along. I thought the tempo was great. The depth was great, etc. I got to the bird years and I said, this probably needed another episode because there's so much that happens in the bird years that it almost feels like it's the most important part. Now, I know the start with Bill Russell and Cousy is vitally important. We know the big 3 in 2008, vitally important. We know all the down years, the 90s and 2000s, but the bird years felt, as I watched it, I said, nobody's done this as well as they did. Really digging inside that decade run. And I'm wondering, did you feel like that chapter could have been its own, maybe not 9-part, but you probably spent 2 episodes of the bird years, maybe 3. 2.5, 3 full?
3 full, yeah.
Okay. I almost thought that it could have been 4 or 5.
So, I mean, first of all, I think, and Lauren and I were talking about it this week, it's like, if the biggest note you get from people is just wishing that it was longer, you've done a good job. So, So congrats to us. Sure. Could we have made another hour on the bird era? Yeah, of course. It wouldn't have served the story better. I mean, I also don't know. There wasn't any new information that we had that we took out. So it would have just been more stories that have been out there for a long time. The bird era is also pretty heavily documented with a lot of, scores of books and several documentaries made on it. So we wanted to just bring fresh perspective to some of the bigger moments and also see how that bird hour fit into the greater story of Boston and the Celtics.
No doubt. This is what you did well. You balanced everything out and everything felt like you gave it significance and time. I just thought that when it came to the bird mythology, I feel like I've seen so much on Russell and Cousy and the early years. Maybe the 70s hasn't been documented as much, the 2 titles there. Maybe not at all. But once you got to the big 3, I was like, this feels so recent. I'm not feeling as though I missed anything of this era. Whereas the bird years, and maybe it's because of my age, I'm 46 years old, or I'll be 46 next month. So that's the prime of my youth. I'm like, I really didn't know they all hated Fitch. I really didn't know that Parrish and Bird had a clash. I really didn't understand that McHale busted his entire rest of his career because of the 87 series. I really didn't understand all of that stuff along the way. And so I did think that you guys uncovered stuff that I thought it was worth, at least giving yourselves a pat on the back. I don't think you just kept covering the things that everybody covered.
No, and I think to your point, if we added that extra hour, we would have just been telling stories that have been told. We pointed the camera places, and yeah, no one knew that Parrish had that issue with Bird. That's the first time he ever said it. Jackie McMullen, who did that interview, was also shocked. I mean, she like asked like several follow-ups right after that. She was stunned that he felt that way, and she's known him since the moment he arrived in Boston. So yeah, it's, you know, I'm glad to hear you say that, but yeah, we wanted to make sure we had room for the things that fans didn't know, and I do agree. Like the Fitch era was the Fitch mutiny was really interesting to us because it was something that, you know, Larry Bird, who's very particular in what he says, like, yeah, in his interview, he was really pointed about how annoyed he was with his teammates for quitting on Fitch and how important Fitch was to his life. And one little tidbit that didn't really belong anywhere, but yeah, Larry Bird introduced Bill Fitch on his Hall of Fame induction. So like, and for us, that was interesting too, because it's like this moment in time where Bird's not lockstep with his teammates. And I don't think people really think about it like that. I think that Bird was probably very challenging to play with. And I shouldn't say probably, people told us he was challenging. You know, genius always is challenging, right? And he's a basketball genius.
So for those that didn't watch the doc or don't know, Bill Fitch was the first coach of the Celtics when they won in 81 with Larry Bird. Things got sideways. He was too tough of a coach. Most of the team said, we're not playing for this guy anymore, but Bird loved him. Even though he got fired, Bird held a resentment against his teammates for basically quitting on Bill Fitch. What didn't make the documentary, which I was blown away by afterwards, was I didn't realize Fitch coached the 86 Rockets, who the Celtics played in the finals. And that was perhaps the greatest Celtics team ever, the 86 Celtics. Did you guys try to find a way to fit that narrative in?
I think there's a cutaway or two of Fitch on the sidelines during that sequence. But yeah, again, that's when you're just like, there's so many different places to point the camera. And, you know, at the time for the Rockets series, it was just a coronation at that point. And the most interesting thing too was like the Ralph Sampson and again, just it always has to be about both the Celtics and the city. It was also that crowd, the Boston Garden being a character. So like, yeah, but yes, there was a bit of a revenge there, but I don't think that the Celtics could have been the Celtics with any other coach other than Casey Jones. I think Bill Fitch, like, he really served a vital role. And I think Parrish says it on the doc. He was training those guys for those harder moments, and he was hard on them. But that has a shelf life, and I think we see it all the time with coaches. There's a certain shelf life where that being a hard ass like kind of runs out. And I don't think the Celtics would have been as great as they were without Bill Fitch at the beginning, but they couldn't be as great as they ended up being with Bill Fitch as the coach. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think if you were going to do an extra episode, there is certainly a story there where how did Bird feel about going against Fitch? How did the rest of the Celtics feel about going against Fitch? How did Fitch feel about going against the Celtics? As you said, it's a coronation, but it does go 6 games. And there is the Ralph Sampson moment, which is he kind of like loses his mind when he's such a calm demeanor guy. That is pretty fascinating. But also something, and not to belabor the Bird point of the Bird era, but at this moment in time, I feel like Bird now grows in mythical status every day because of social media. Unlike the more recent eras, unlike the oldest era, there's all these anecdotes now about guys that played against Bird where they say, yeah, and he said this and then did it. Or he said this, this, and this, and then wouldn't you know it, he did this. And that's now kind of all over Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. So it kind of like begs the, oh my God, I can't wait to hear more of that stuff. But at the end of Bird's career, along with Parrish and McHale, I mean, Red Auerbach actually had a trade on the table that he declined of trading Larry Bird. It seems impossible to believe. Danny Ainge wanted him to do it, but there were offers out there to trade Larry Bird.
Yeah, I mean, in our research, there was one like offer. I'm sure there were others, but yeah, there was one offer. Off the top of my, don't ask me off the top of my head what it was. Whatever Danny Ainge said in the doc is what it was. And yeah, I mean, at that time, Bird was injured, and yeah, it was never going to be Larry Bird again for a full season. He was there in spurts, but yeah, and it's something that Ainge, took forward in, another few decades, and ends up trading Pearson Garnett and turns Pearson Garnett into like the next potential Boston Celtic dynasty, which is just wild.
Yeah, Ainge, this is a fascinating subplot as well, is that Danny Ainge was the guy that Red Auerbach traded out of that 80s team, and he kept all the other old guys. And Ainge was the guy during that era that said, trade all the old guys. And he said that to his GM's face at a Christmas party, and to his bosses, to his players, to his teammates. Ainge ends up becoming the GM, and then trades away the guys like Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to reboot the next era. So it's so interesting how that came back around. With that being a backdrop, that 08 team, the big three, Garnett, Pierce, and Ray Allen, totally frayed at the end. Ubuntu goodwill in 08 had completely dried up a couple of years later. I was in Boston working 98.5 The Sports Hub. We had tons of anecdotes and stories coming out about just how bad it was in that locker room. Were you guys ever going to include where Rajon Rondo throws the water bottle at the projector screen as Doc Rivers is pointing out one of his mistakes, because that basically got him, isolated and voted off the island in Celtics land?
Yeah, we have that story from all angles. I think what I found really interesting was all of those guys were really open and honest with what went wrong at the end and why there was a falling out. Again, you have to make decisions. And, I think that by and large, like all of us just leaned into the character of it all, and the Ray and Rondo disagreement, and how that just the anti-Ubuntu-ness of it all was the cleanest and most concise way to tell the story of them breaking up. But yeah, that's another one where you could have done an hour on the downfall of the big three. It probably would have been compelling, but then it gets you further and further away from the thesis of what we're doing here, which is that it is the story of the entire 78 year run of the Boston Celtics. But yeah, there's just crazy stories. There's another story that's pretty well known that's in a great book by Michael Holiday called The Big Three, where, every so often to blow off steam, those guys would put on boxing gloves and box each other. They would just go round, they would just team up and go round to round. And yeah, there was a moment where Ray and Rondo went at it, and where they kept going at it, and everyone had to break up the fight. So yeah, there's a ton of stories. There's, KG, everyone's got a KG story. Everyone's got a Paul Pierce story. Everyone's got a Rondo story. Everyone's got a Ray story.
One thing, I'm going to be honest with you because you're a friend, I felt lacking, and you can tell me why you made the decision, was why Paul Pierce got stabbed. It's a tragic, traumatic incident. It scars him literally and emotionally for the rest of his days. It's fascinating to see the type of wounds that are still there, again, literally and figuratively. And we see that story being part of his story the entire time he's there, including when he's traded, saying, I spilled blood in these streets and they're going to trade me. But we don't know why guys jumped him at a nightclub and stabbed him nearly to death, even though he took the stand in a trial for it. So what was the story there?
There's another one where it wasn't super clear to anybody. I think there's a lot of conjecture of what's going on. Paul's never been super clear about it. And yeah, it just, again, story-wise, in the same way, Len Bias and Reggie Lewis, it's, Len Bias, pretty clear what happened. Reggie Lewis, it's very murky. It's not about that. And I think that's the way that Lauren and I and the rest of our team went into it. It's not exact. It's why he was stabbed wasn't as important to us as what it did to him. And we wanted to see the character of Paul Pierce and see how he tried to get through it. And the 82 games is more important than just having a bunch of people just throwing theories at the wall.
Fair. Clearly, Rick Pitino plays the most polarizing interview subject in this. Everybody else kind of has a bit of a, all right, I could see that. But boy, Pitino, and it was interesting that your words kept ringing in my mind after our first interview 9 weeks ago, where it was either you or Lauren, and you said, well, Rick told his truth. I think you said that. Rick told his truth. So when you sat down with Rick, everybody else in the documentary basically says, look, Rick ruined the franchise. He drafted Chauncey Billups. He traded him 51 games in. He wanted to win right away. Didn't matter what happened down the road. That's not the way to build a winner. His expectations were unrealistic. He wasn't all in. All of that stuff. And he just drove everybody absolutely insane. He demoted Red Auerbach to basically the basement of the Garden. He said, I'm pushing you away. I make all the decisions around here. And the way Rick told it was it wasn't as good a coach back then, or I shouldn't have been a GM, which was his, okay. He acquiesced. He said, I didn't need to be the president. But also he kind of shrugs his shoulders. It's I'm just a speck of dust in the long lineage of the Celtics. When in reality, he actually plays this enormously controversial and much debated role in Celtics history.
I think that if you watch it, you come up with your own, and I think that's the way a really good doc works. It's you present both sides and you let the viewer kind of make their own determination of what their truth is, right? Everyone has their own version of it. I thought it was very important, and I still think it was important for Coach Pitino to sit and tell his side of it. He never really explained it. I think it was important for him to own up to the fact that it didn't go well, and that he shouldn't have been president. I agree with your assessment, by the way, of when he's saying I was just a speck of a grain of sand on a beach or whatever. Yeah, well, he tried to affect change in the most historic franchise. So no, you're not. In those years of your tenure, you did change a lot. You tried to basically as you said, demote Red. Just kind of change what the Boston Celtics were about. We asked all those questions to him, and that's what he presented. And you see both sides of it. It's interesting. It's as you see the reaction to this series, that one definitely got a lot.
There's only one thing that I was left going I wonder why. Mm-hmm. And Bill Simmons approached this a little bit in one of his interviews, that many of the antagonists of the Celtics didn't want to be on camera. And I thought, that's so weird. Isaiah, Magic, LeBron, all of these enemies of the state, and none of them wanted to be interviewed. And I thought, that's so weird because, it's a Celtics doc, but I thought James Worthy came off great in this, and Worthy was happily anti-Celtics. He loved being anti-Celtics. So how much of a bummer was it? And what's your thought on why so many of those guys just didn't want to talk?
So the why of it, I think, Bill Simmons has said numerous times, The Last Dance kind of, freak people out. No one wants to be made to look bad, and no one wants to, be the villain. It is funny because when we were doing the captain, I can't tell you how many people were like, am I going to look like Jerry Krause in this? So people are totally aware of what could happen. So I understand, we do have some of the same executive producers of The Last Dance on this. And so when we do outreach, people, they do their research and they see who it is. And there's a few of those names you mentioned that all I really wish happened was that they got on the phone with Lauren or me, and we can tell them hey, look, this is what these are the questions we're going to ask you. These are the moments that we want to explore with you. And, with Isaiah, that's the one where I'm just I'm really bummed. And I understand Isaiah didn't want to talk, most likely because of the comments that he made, right after they got eliminated in '87 in the Eastern Conference Finals. That sparked a lot of controversy. He also was, made to be a villain in The Last Dance. But we also know that Isaiah Thomas had a friendship with Bill Russell that we wanted to explore. That the crazy story that we really wanted to get in there was that when Isaiah throws that pass that Bird picks off, that turns that series in '87, Isaiah gets the ball stolen. After the game, Bill Russell calls Isaiah Thomas and gives him a pep talk. And that story would have been so great getting from Isaiah instead of the two reporters we have telling that story, that we tried it just didn't land. And And also, like Isaiah has said numerous times publicly, that like the Celtics taught the Pistons how to win. Losing to them in '87 and playing against those guys taught them how to be champions, which we also thought was interesting. In the end, like what I told Isaiah's people was like, he won. So I don't know what he's, so worried about. We're just going to present him as an opponent. Same with Magic. Same with all these other, with LeBron. I wish we got him. I think we did a great job of, you don't really feel their absence. And I also agree with you 100%. James Worthy is the man. He was great.
Yeah. I mean, and Magic. Jerry West was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because Magic specifically is so charismatic. So is Isaiah. But Magic he's never the enemy. He's always is charming and amazing. And he won twice against Bird. So it would be like, he would have the ultimate role on this of like, and I got him back in 85 and 87. And what can you say about that? So, that was weird to me that they didn't want to speak. Also, it's just a sports documentary. It's not like the George Carls, and I guess Jerry Krause does get his legacy, I guess, does get tarnished in his after that. But it's like, Isaiah's life didn't change much, I can't imagine, because of The Last Dance, nor would it after this documentary as well.
I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know how those things, I'm not Isaiah Thomas, so I can't speak for that, but I agree. And also, like, it's not the same. We weren't going to set him up. There was no gotcha.
Definitely.
I'm not saying that's what happened in The Last Dance either. That's the way he feels. That's the way he feels. I agree with everything you're saying. I really wish those guys would it's just sports.
And you never know how you will be framed, so I can empathize with that. But I bet you if they had watched this 9-part series, they would no longer be worried that they would have been framed unfairly, because you guys were very level, very even-handed about everything. So, like I said at the outset of this, man, I thought it was just an exquisitely made sports documentary, really just a documentary in general. But I tend to consume a lot of these, and I just thought there were a few things along the way. I'm like, oh man, that was good. Oh, they spliced that in well. Oh, that ended right at the right moment. Oh, that picked up right at the perfect moment. And I texted you this. Some of the footage from the 60s is extraordinary because there's so few games that were recorded on film or television from the early days of the NBA. Even through the 70s, there are so few games. Simmons wrote about this in Book of Basketball, that when he went back to really study the league and the history, there was just limited footage to watch. It's not like NFL Films, who has been filming every single game of the league's existence since the 60s. This is a limited trove of footage you guys had to work with. And I never felt like it was lacking. I'm like, oh, they got that play. Oh, they got that shot. Oh, they got that instant replay. So great job by you guys all around. It was, if you haven't seen it, it is definitely worth digging into this spring and summer.
I appreciate it. Yeah, our editors in those early episodes, we kept saying they're working with cave drawings here. They crushed it. It's insane. The NBA only has 10 full regular season Bill Russell games in their entire archive. That's all that exists. The rest of the Bill Russell games are playoff things. So all this amazing basketball has been lost to the ages. And our edit team is just like, I was in awe of them those first few episodes because they had so little to work with and they made it really dynamic.
It's awesome. It's available right now on Max. You can stream it all episodes right now are available, so you can binge it or take your time. As I did, I kind of spaced out one a week, or maybe if I missed one, I did 2 the next week. But it was all well worth it, man. Gabe, great job on this. Thanks so much for joining us twice along the way, and we'll certainly be in touch. Can't wait to see what your next project is, buddy.
Awesome. I appreciate your support, and thanks for having me on.
You got it, man. Gabe Honig joining us here on the show. He's the showrunner for Celtics City.